I only hope that we never lose sight of one thing, that it was all started by a mouse.
Hello, everyone out there in podcast land. This is the Beyond the Mouse podcast, the podcast for all things Disney for NPR Illinois Community Voices and for the Front Row Network. I'm your host, Craig, joined today by my co-host, Mr. Brett Rutherford.
Hello there.
And Miss Vanessa Ferguson.
Hello.
All right, everybody. We have such a fun and exciting guest here today to get into an interview. And really, I want to kind of pass a little bit of this off to Brett, because this is an interview he was able to get while he was at the Festival of the Arts in Epcot back in January. So Brett, tell us who we're talking to today.
We are talking to Dave Avanzino, who is a Disney artist. He is a sculpture, kind of multimedia sculpture is his métier, if I may use that French word. Well, anyway, it's what he likes to do, and he's so good at it. But I'm a big fan, so I was thrilled to see him, to make some art purchases, and to invite him on the podcast. And I'm so excited that he's here. He's going to be here today, very shortly.
Absolutely, and we get to tell him bonjour, because that's the extent of my French. So I wanted to make sure that I got that out of the way. But no, this will be really fun because I love being able to talk to fine artists. I had the experience when we covered St. Louis Comic-Con for the network a long time ago, a gentleman named Clinton T. Hobart, who is a Disney fine artist as well. And it's just cool to be able to see this because it is such a small community of people. Obviously, the license that Disney has is one of the most exclusive and profitable licenses in the world. You don't want just anybody out there making your artwork. So it certainly speaks to his talent and to his creativity that Disney has allowed him to do this. Vanessa, your thoughts on the interview we have coming up?
I'm really excited because Brett was very nice to bring me back in a Dave Avanzino piece. So it's kind of weird because I feel like I have him on my wall. So now it's like I'm going to get to really connect the personality with the art piece that I look at every day. So I'm really excited to do that. And of course, we talk to a lot of creative people on here, and it's always a blast. There's such wonderful people to interview. So I am really looking forward to this one.
You have them on your wall. Now you're going to have them on your computer screen. So with that, we will go right to our interview with Dave Avanzino. Welcome to Beyond the Mouse, a Community Voices podcast for NPR Illinois. Dave Avanzino, how are you, sir?
Doing pretty good. Yeah.
That's great. That's great. How are things out on the West Coast?
Today it's quite lovely. It's like, I don't know, 75, sunny. I'm in shorts. You know, it's hard. You can't complain about it.
All right, before we get too
people are
jealous
still
about
digging
that.
themselves out around the country.
Before we get too jealous about that, we better jump into the actual questions. Brett, you have our first.
I first saw your work around the time of Disneyland's 50th anniversary. How did you become involved in celebrating their big anniversary?
Well, by that time, I'd been doing work for the parks for several years, and it kind of started very small and was the result of a fortuitous meeting with the picture framer that does all the work for the parks. And I just got to know them, and they would just introduce me to different people when I was in there. And so I've been doing little gift pieces for people and, you know, minor contributions. And then one day I got asked to consult on a project for one of the ticketed events that they used to do, where I would say people paid money to go and buy stuff like in the parks. And they were awesome. They were like after hours and really great. So it was a Mr. Toad event, and all I did was kind of help design a mat for this one print, and I wound up painting an original painting that got shrunk down and put in this mat. And they wound up selling the painting, so I got to go and kind of, you know, become aware of this world that was out there that I'd been going to the park for years, but had no idea there was this whole other level of collector and stuff like that. So at that event, I met the buyer's superior, and he gave me a meeting, and then they started talking about the next event, which was Cinderella's Ball. It was one of the big anniversaries for that. And so for that event was the first time I did one of my kind of handmade limited editions. And then I started doing all those events. So maybe 2 or 3 a year. I'd make 10 or, you know, just some, not anything really large, no prints or anything, just kind of a handmade limited edition. And then buyers changed. And so within a few years, I had a buyer who at some point said, well, why don't you make things we sell every day in the park? And I was like, I don't know. I would be very, very open to that. And so then she just started to kind of like ask me what I want to do. And it would kind of be based on anniversaries of films or attractions. And, you know, they might give me a purchase order and I'd make 10 of something and they'd sell in the Disneyana shop or the gallery. So then when the 50th came around, I was sort of already, you know, kind of a parks artist. And so I was somebody they came to and they said, what would you like to do? Now I kind of kicked myself because I think it was like 2001. It was it was the last Disneyana convention they ever had at Disneyland. And that was where I came up with kind of the letter plaque idea, like where I did the word Disneyland with little attraction icons. And so I had handmade a set of all 5 original lands in Disneyland and they all sold out. So I kind of was like, oh, darn, that would have been a great set for the 50th. I'm gonna have a hard time coming up with anything better than that. But that was about the time we started figuring out how to, maybe we could mass produce something that I did. And we've done one option that really did not work well. And so I said, well, let's try it one more time. And whereas the first one, they kind of just molded the whole thing in one big plaque. I said, well, what if we try it where they make every letter separately and then glue them on the background? And then it looked more like my stuff. So those came out for the 50th for the first time. And that was great because it was, you know, prior to then, what I heard a lot was, oh, I love your stuff, but I can't afford it, you know, because it was $700, $800, $900. I understand. So all of a sudden there was something that was $75. And that kind of just opened the door to like a whole other level of collector. And then that also kind of opened the door to coming up with other things to mass produce. I started doing like attractions like Haunted Mansion and Pirates and Tiki Room and did several of those over the years. So then I took that theme and came up with a custom version that we launched at one of the D23s. They're all kind of a blur. It might have been the second or third one. And so now I've been doing those for 10 years or something. And then that's kind of what got me into the parks, kind of doing events, like just my own event, you know, where I come in and I sell that. And then that sort of led to me creating a whole product line that I bring with me, which I didn't have before. Other than some limited editions, I started making, you know, matted prints, and now I'm doing canvases and limited edition canvases. And so it's kind of morphed over the years to where now I'm a consignment artist. So they don't, other than that one Disneyland plaque, they don't sell my stuff in the parks anymore. But I kind of bring in a show and then I take my show out.
Wow. Well, we all enjoy it.
It's been an interesting run.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. And I get to kind of start to ask the origin story questions. So I'm always interested because I actually came to the love of the parks a little bit later than most. I started going to the parks much more when I was an adult. But I'm wondering for you, can you talk about how you fell in love with Disney and maybe even more specifically, your love of the parks? And was that something that happened at a young age? Was it always there for you, or did it happen a little bit later on?
Probably a little of both. Like I grew up in California, but in Northern California. And we had family in Southern California. So we came down usually once a year for Thanksgiving. Sometimes we'd come in the summer and stay at my cousin's house while they were somewhere nicer. But they had this fantastic home in LA, you know, so that was like our vacation was staying in their house. And so a lot of those times we would come down and go to Disneyland. So I have a few pictures of me as a kid, like I think on the teacups, and you know, so I'm not sure how many times we came. I would say several. It wasn't like a yearly thing. So, you know, just as a kid, you loved it.
Right.
I don't remember being like, you know, hitting my parents up like, we got to go back. But we definitely went. I remember coming, you know, then I remember coming a little older and, you know, had my grad night. But then I moved down to Southern California, and then I had kind of learned about the whole annual pass thing, which I guess had started because I was down here in the early 80s. So at some point when those started, I started getting those and, you know, going more regularly. learning how to park in the employee parking lot, and just all the shortcuts that you used to be able to do to get in faster. And then had those for years, got married, and then once I got married, had a kid. And my wife and I, before we had kids, like we both had passes, so we went a lot. So really, that part of it, like probably more as an adult, that I really came to like really love it and just appreciate like how incredible it was, and just the idea that they came up with at that time in history, like that was so groundbreaking and so imaginative. And I love just reading all the stories about, how they developed this stuff that didn't exist, and one of my favorite parts, and one of the things I really admire about Walt Disney was I always feel like he knew what people could do that they didn't know themselves, and like he would tap animators and say, you're going to make this dark ride. Mm-hmm. And they'd say like, I don't do that. And he's like, no, you can do it. And they did it. And they came up with some of like the most top of the line things to this day that hold up, so I love those kind of stories that it was like, just with all the people saying you can't do that and that's going to be terrible. And, he's just like, nope, it's going to be great. And he just believed in it and, got the right people and was a great cheerleader to them. And so I say like Small World's a great example. Like as a kid or as an adult, you're like, Small World. Once I had a child and started writing that with my child, I'm like, this is pretty amazing. It's, song and everything gets a little old, but it's like, this is stunning. And the fact that they came up with that in like 9 months, originally was, kind of blows your mind. Yeah. So I said, as an artist, as I do set design, all these other weird things I've done, it's like Disneyland, and just the concept that it's a show, that there's on stage, there's backstage, that just the creativity and the thought that went into all the different elements of it, not just, here's a great attraction, but it's like the cast members and that the guest experience mattered and stuff. So I said, my love and appreciation for it, I think comes more just as a grown adult, mm-hmm. being able to look at it a little bit more than, what ride do you want to go on? Like, let's go on the fastest ride, that you as a kid, you're just like, boom, 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 how can we get on all these things? Now I'm like, wow, that landscaping is really great. Or look at that, look where they did that sign,
Just all the little minute details, right? That of course, an artist like you would appreciate. And I always come back to Exitencio writing Pirates of the Caribbean, having never written lyrics before. And now this is one of like the most recognizable songs.
Oh yeah, iconic.
Ever. Like people know that yo ho, Pirate's Life for Me. And so it's just incredible, the amount of artistry that comes out of that park. But Vanessa, you have a question more specific to his art.
I do. Yes. Well, I figure we should probably go back just a little bit and learn more about you and how you became an artist. And so we're wondering, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself? And okay, this is the joke that was written. Are you get ready for this? I'd say you were drawn to art, but it's still a little early for us to make such an obvious pun. So thank you. Thank you for suffering along with me.
The funny part of that
That's so funny.
Is that I regularly tell people that I don't draw very well. And they always kind of like go, that doesn't make sense given what you do. But I try to draw better than most people, but I'm like, that's not my medium. Like, I don't take a pencil and draw stuff. Mm-hmm. I'm more of a fabricator. And so as a kid, like both my brother and I are artists. He's actually an animation director. Worked on Futurama and all sorts of stuff. So cool. My recollection of him is him drawing like comic books, like Spider-Man, like figurative. That was never me. I would go into a store and see some little knickknack and I would come home and replicate it. So I was more of a fabricator. So when I draw, I'm like really loosely sketching something that I'm going to make out of something else. So, but it does kind of throw people where they're like, but look at what you make. How do you say you don't draw? And it's like, it's just like, I've been doing this for 20 years. I can do a respectable Mickey head and that's about it. Cause I don't practice drawing the characters, which had I been practicing that for 20 years, I'd be great. My biggest fear is some kid coming up at an event saying, can you draw me a character? Because I'm like, I really can't.
I can whittle you something real fast.
I can write your name really cool.
Yeah.
So as a kid, I always was creative in that way, but more of like fabricating stuff and writing. I wrote a lot. I'm really good at like kind of like spoofy songs and, you know, funny stories. I was creative in a lot of ways. And I did draw. I drew Snoopy all through like middle school and high school. It's all over everybody's yearbooks. And from that time, my junior high paper. So I grew up drawing Snoopy, not the Disney characters, because they weren't really on TV when I was a kid. Like we didn't have cable. I mean, it was just kind of coming around then. So I didn't grow up, other than with the movies in the theaters, it was not a part of like my childhood the way that it is for kids now, where you've got all the shows on TV and stuff. So in high school, actually middle school, I got into music and theater, actually theater first and then music. So in high school, I was like in the show choir for my whole high school. And so I actually moved to Southern California to go to Cal State Fullerton because I was a vocal performance major.
Wow.
Yeah.
We're three performers here too. So,
yeah.
You know,
And I said that it was a great lesson, but what it did was it sucked all the fun out of it. And it just made me hate it.
Yeah.
And I just realized it wasn't for me. Like, you know, so I kind of like keep this over here where it's fun. Or, you know, I sang a lot at church and performed. I was like, it's fun. I enjoy it. It's not my career. I wasn't that level of a musician to really like go at it full time, but it was a great lesson. And so I kind of always still kind of did art, but it was, you know, I never took classes because I was always in music. So I changed my major to art. I'd got a job in a small advertising agency, hand lettering real estate flyers. Because this was before computers. You know, we had to do typesetting if it was a big job. But most of it was just kind of these hand lettered real estate flyers. And I loved it. And so I changed my major to art and then wound up going back to a university after. I took a year at a junior college, like, hey, let's pay a little less money and see if I like this.
Yeah.
And then went back to Cal State Long Beach and just got a degree in general art. I was going to do graphic design, but it was I found out once I was there, it's really hard to get in that program. You know, I'd been in school for 3 years and it was like, even I think after they let you in, it was another 2. And I'm like, I just kind of want out. So I just got to general art, which was great because I took a lot of 3D sculpting. I just was very mixed media is my appeal much more than 2D or even, I said, graphic design. It kind of started to wear off on me as a something I liked. So, you know, then I worked for that ad agency for quite a few years after that. It grew bigger. We finally got computers and did our own typesetting, which was nice. And then I started doing, most of the stuff goes back to somebody I knew. I had a friend whose mom was an interior designer for model homes in Orange County and worked at one of the biggest companies at the time. And she just said, isn't your friend an artist? And she said, yeah. And she goes, can he paint a mural? And I said, yes, because that's my whole career is saying yes to things I don't know how to do and then figuring out how to do it. So for about 10 years, I painted murals in model homes all over Southern California. And it was a great living. And it taught me how to paint a lot of things. The challenge was like, sometimes it'd give you a picture of like, it was like a watercolor painting of like the housing tract. And they'd say, put this on the wall.
Oh, wow.
So, you know, it's a little hard to paint watercolor on the wall. So you'd have to do something that looked like watercolor, but that wasn't actually watercolor. So it was a great learning experience. It taught me a lot of techniques and stuff. And then got into, I'd always done kind of theatrical set design, but I had another friend who was a filmmaker. It's like, want to be a production designer? It's like, all right. So I was a production designer on a few video series and 2 TV movies and decided I liked it. I didn't like it enough to like where I would say at best, it was the hardest job I ever did. At worst, it was the hardest job I ever did with people yelling at me. And at that time I was kind of doing more Disney and I'm like, I can make Disney stuff that people say really nice things to me about. And I don't have to drive an hour and a half to get to the office. So that won out.
Wow.
So, yeah, so eventually I just kind of shifted almost full time to Disney as that increased. It wasn't always the point it could be. And then I always have other jobs on the side and stuff. but that's kind of been the biggest source of income for the last several years, which has been nice. It's a nice thing to get to do. So it's been a weird path. Had some unusual jobs in there, but I said what I love about the pieces I make is that they're really this weird combination of all these jobs, from the graphic design to murals to set design. They all kind of come together in these little almost theatrical pieces. So
yeah,
I like it.
Absolutely.
Never doubt your path, because you get to where you are and it's a good thing. So
yeah. I said I couldn't have picked it. I would not have picked it in a million years or predicted it. That I would be where I'm at doing what I do. As a kid, I was very impatient. Like, when you build models, do you ever build those plastic models? I couldn't wait for the glue to dry. And so I kept moving forward, and then eventually it would all collapse, and, just was like an impatient kid. And so the fact that I spend my day like cutting minute, tiny little things over and over is kind of funny.
Yeah. Wow.
Say, as an impatient adult, I'm
guessed.
sure. Yeah, I'm sure that it's so time consuming. Brett, you had a question about set design. I don't know if maybe it was answered in that last question.
I think it was I've followed you on Facebook since I became part of Facebook. And I know and I think I'm a top, I don't know.
Oh, top fan. Yeah.
I think I'm a top fan, which seems a little stalkerly, which is a little scary. I'm like, well, you get a badge and all of that sort of stuff. Yeah. And I'm like going, I just give a thumbs up and a support. I'm like going, but I have seen on Facebook, some of your, like when you've worked on some set design pieces. It was a couple of years ago, but I do some set design here too. So that's why I'm like going, oh, he's just so cool. Look at that stuff, So, so do you do that just from time to time, or as people ask you, or projects?
Yeah, I mean, it's not anything I throw myself out there for. I had done it. I did it a lot. I kind of learned to basically do it at my church. Like we actually did some pretty big productions. It wasn't.
I think that's what I saw.
And I said it was
Beauty and the Beast.
The challenge. No, that was a local theater company. But like,
okay.
This is like 25, 30 years ago. I was doing sets at my church, and it was a great learning ground because you have no backstage, you have no curtain. Like you have to be super creative to come up with things that can turn into other things. It's like sort of that low budget forces you to be super creative. So it was great. And then having been in theater, I mean, I just always loved scenery. And so I'm pretty much all self-taught. I never had a class in it. I mean, just kind of translating the things I know from other things into that. I always say I think my strongest art skill is problem solving. In that I know what I want to make, and I'm starting here, and what do I have to do to get there? So I always picture the end thing, and then I have to kind of back engineer it. So so I did a lot, again, friends who ran children's theaters and did their sets. Yeah. And so several years ago, I started working with it basically was a youth theater, but they had adults in their show. They were kind of community theater level. They did really, really good productions. So I think the first, I just met these people and they were doing Hairspray, and like called me like 3 weeks before the show because they had contracted with another theater to build the set and they were going to share it. And then like 3 weeks before their show found out this other place had bailed and hadn't done anything.
Oh, no.
So they just met me and they're like, could you possibly paint our set? So did that one really fast. And then I think the next year I designed Tarzan, and then kind of not every year, but then they did like Mary Poppins and Little Mermaid. And they were great. It was fun. It was fun because there was a good group of people that built it. Like I didn't have to build it. I could design
that's
it.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah. And hand it off and then show up and paint it. So it was a good way to do it. If you have to do it all, it's a little much. So cool. As I said, I love that. And then I got to be in a couple of them. I was Professor Porter in Tarzan, and then the last one I did was Little Mermaid, and I got to do Chef Louis, which was pretty fun.
Oh, that's
Oh
great.
wow, that is fun.
Because I went and
Yeah,
watched it. I watched another company's production of it because I'd never seen it as a stage show. I don't know how it worked. And was just like, oh, I got to do that. that
Oh,
looks
how
like
cool. Oh, that is good. That is
sadly, I was so out of shape. It was a little rough.
good. Oh,
By the end of the run, I was just kind of a mess. But
theater keeps you young. So
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just so much fun to get to do those
I
roles.
love
especially.
I love theater. I mean, the film stuff's okay. I like theater because your sets are a character. Like in film, as long as it's like unless it's a set piece or a period piece or a sci-fi piece, if it's just offices and houses, it's just background. And as long as it's believable, nobody notices it, you know, which is true. And so what I love
you don't
about
want
theater,
them to notice it. So yeah.
it's if you notice it, it's not a good thing. Like,
Yeah.
oh, that looks really fake, you know.
Yeah.
So theater is more satisfying because you can't help but notice it. Like
Right.
and it has to be, it is a character in the show, and so it has to work well and look good. And so I really enjoy theater. I'd love to do more of that, but it's very time consuming.
Yes,
Yes.
it certainly can be for sure. So going back more to your the art side of things, you have so much art now available through the Disney Gallery. It has to be a really gratifying feeling to have that. And you talked about this a bit in your first answer about the anniversary and how you got into that. But I'm just wondering, sort of if you could expand upon how that worked. How did you show them your portfolio to be able to book that first gig with Disney? And then you actually have mentioned this I went back and listened to some podcast interviews you did several years ago. And one of the things you said that caught my interest was you said, you know, I've had to go through 5 or 6 different buyers at this point, and it's always a little nerve-wracking to go through a new buyer. So what's that process like? I mean, are you kind of repitching yourself to the person that comes next?
That's kind of what I always feel like. Yeah, because I mean, it could totally come down to somebody's taste, where they could literally say, "Oh yeah, you know, I'm not really a fan of this, and I don't really see a place for it." So fortunately, that's never happened. That's always kind of the concern, you know. And I'm kind of a different animal in that there's about a dozen sort of consignment artists like me that sort of come in with like a trunk show and do our show and leave. Most of the artists, you know, they turn their art over to Disney, and then Disney produces it and sells it, and they just kind of get a piece of that. So I'm kind of a different animal. I have custom things which are, you know, not problematic, but they're harder to handle because, you know, I sell it and then they have to handle the purchase order, you know. So, you know, I think I'm always worried that somebody's just going to go, yeah, that's, you know, we've done that long enough. And I think, you know, I don't see a need for that anymore, which, you know, hopefully is not going to happen. But, you know, always in the back of your head, you're like, you know, that's why it's always a little nerve wracking when somebody new comes in. But I mean, but most of the time people are, you know what, my last buyer, you know, one of the things he said I always went back to this as a comfort was he says, you bring something different to the gallery. You know, because of I have a different medium, and it's a blessing and a curse, because it's a blessing in that it's different. It's a curse in that it's much harder to do. You know, it's not like I just finished a painting and then hand it off and somebody else does all the other work. Mm-hmm. I'm still, you know, reproducing it and cutting them apart and assembling them. So it's I like the fact that I do something different. It's works against me in some ways just because there's a limited amount of stuff I can do every year.
Yeah, absolutely. Brett, you had our next question specifically about those shadow boxes.
Well, it is. I mean, you know, I fell in love. Yes, I have yet to purchase you know, because we've talked about that, but the Disneyland with the iconic, mm-hmm. you know, letters. I'm like, how did you decide what icons to choose and all of that process? And how did that idea come to you? Were you walking around the park and going, there's a D, you know? And I'm like going, you know, how was that inspiration?
Well, I said back to that, it was that, I think 2001 Disneyana convention. And they had asked me, because back then there was like 5 people like me, you know, that did art for these special events. I mean, there was not a big group of people that they went to. It was literally 5 or 6 of us. And so they came to me and they said, you know, come up with something, you know, for this Disneyana convention. So, and it was kind of based around Disneyland. So I went to the park one day. It was literally just walking around going, what am I going to do? It's like, no pressure, just come up with something great. And I said, my only memory, I don't know for sure, but I have a vague memory of kind of looking at the Matterhorn and going, that kind of looks like an A. And then that was just like the light bulb that went, what if I spelled Disneyland out of things? And so then the priority with the Disneyland one, the priority became, I got to get every land in here, or at least I think I got the original 5 lands in there. I think I have one right here. I'm looking. No, I got everything in there. It's like there's Fantasyland, Main Street, Adventureland, Frontierland, New Orleans Square, another Fantasyland, Toontown, and Tomorrowland. So, you know, then the search changes, because it's not just what letters can I find. It becomes, how do I get a letter from every land? You know, because you don't want, like, it's easy to do Fantasyland, but you can't have everything be Fantasyland. So, and then once I, like, if I'm just doing Adventureland, that becomes a little easier, because you're just in there, you know, looking at everything in that one land, and everything's fair game. So yeah, so that was, I mean, I said, I don't remember exactly. I do have a faint memory of kind of thinking, oh, the Matterhorn kind of looks like an A. Now I kind of, you know, cheated and put a hole in it, kind of like it was, you know, back when it was the Skyway going,
you know,
through
when the Skyway went through. Well, see, then you get the nostalgia factor, and everyone loves it again.
And every one of the land pieces always had a retired attraction in it too. So I always put something in there that was not there.
The layers. Oh,
yeah. So because cool. I know the Disneyland fans, and they're just fans of the whole park and the history and everything. So I always like to include, you know, things that are gone, because I know there's still a passion for them, whether they're there or not. So that was I said that's my best recollection of it.
Oh, cool. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Vanessa, you had our next question.
Yes, well, we're just stepping away for Disney for just a moment. Some of your art is inspired by tiki culture, and by the way, I found the video where you teach us how to make a tiki guy, and you showed at the beginning of the video. I was like, I'll never be able to replicate that, but then you did it, and I was like, oh well, maybe I could. But I wanted to ask you, I didn't do it yet, but I watched it because I'm like, how's he gonna replicate? This looks like factory made, and then I did the lines and the shading, and then you got me with the highlight. You're like, the light would hit the teeth here, and I was like, oh man, he's good. Like I wouldn't have thought of that. But I hope to do it. It looked really fun and really cool.
Oh, good.
So I wanted to ask you, how does that inspire your work?
Well, you said 2020 was a challenging year for everybody. And, my limitation with my Disney work is that I can't sell it directly to people. I have to be in the parks at one of my shows. So I did the 2019 Epcot Art Festival, and not knowing, that's going to be the last thing I do all year, or for an entire year. So came home, was working on my next event when everything kind of shut down. So a few years ago, I had started, just that thing of like, I need to diversify a little. I need some other sources of income that aren't dependent on me being in the parks. And so I had always loved tiki stuff. I mean, those are some of the funnest pieces I get to work on for Disney. And I'd seen a lot of stuff out there. And I also knew there's a great community of people. It's one of the few mediums that actually has a pretty good fan base. And so had seen some of the shows that were going. I knew some people that did some of the shows. And so I just committed and said, I'm going to do a show. And it sort of forced me to come up with stuff. And so fortunately, I started that a couple of years ago. And so when everything with Disney shut down, I was like, okay, well, we are all tiki right now. Like, let's
tiki 24/7. Yeah.
Yeah, it was good in the sense that it kind of forced my hand, and I didn't have a website prior to that because I just kind of used social media, and it was like, I need a website people can buy stuff from. And so it really sort of forced me to kind of up my game in that. And my analogy is, I said, I was just throwing tiki spaghetti at the wall and like, do you like this? Do you like this? Do you like this? I was like doing just anything I can think of. I mean, my favorite ones were like kind of these tiki robot mashups called Tiki Bots. And like, they didn't really hit, like I sold a few, but like, it wasn't the winner I was hoping it was. But like I did these pirate maps, like custom pirate maps for people. That was huge. I've never even offered them a second time because it took me so long to get through all the orders I took. I was like, one of these days I'll offer those again. Or I did like jack-o'-lantern pineapples, that were carved with a light inside. Like those flew off the shelves. I did some Christmas ornaments that were really popular. So, it just has been kind of a trial and error. Like, I said, there were things I did that were huge, things that were like, I don't make any more of those. Just trying to feel out that market a little. I mean, I wish I'd put more time into it prior to 2020 and had a little bit more of that info, but yeah, so it was fun, and I enjoyed doing the shows. I mean, I'm hoping those come back because I really, really liked going out and being not just selling stuff online. That's nice, but it's much better to kind of be in a crowd. So, but yeah, so then one of the things I did too was I thought it'd be fun to do some workshops. So which I thought I'll do one of these a month, and then they're like, oh my gosh, these take so much prep. It didn't last. So yeah, so I'd come up with something and then put the templates or things on people could download from my Flickr page, and then watch the video and either do it with me or go back and watch it later. And it was great. I mean, I love seeing people send me pictures because I didn't know, like, could anybody do this? Like, how are these going to turn out? It's easy for me to do it, but people send me pictures and they're like, oh, they look pretty good. So yeah, I did it. Cool. The last one I did a Christmas ornament. That was like one of the kind of the Mary Poppins penguins. That was, you didn't have to paint it. It was just kind of cutting it out and gluing it together. But yeah, so those are super fun. I mean, I said I'd do more. It's just now I'm busy again, so it's much harder to carve out that time. But yeah, give it a shot. Let me know.
I might just be a casual watcher. It was very relaxing, like watching Bob Ross. Like one of these days I'll do that, but for now, sit here and sip this and watch him do it really well.
Like a painting party that you don't have to actually paint.
Right.
It's going to seem like you were in our kind of pre-interview meeting when we came up with all these questions, because I think you've led perfectly into Brett's next question.
Well, as a Disney collector, a Disney art collector on a budget, and you have mentioned that you have different, you have your original work, which is extremely detailed and gorgeous and very well worth the price point. I hope to make, it's the penguins that, I have a relationship with penguins, being a former Disney entertainment person, but I can't really go into it. Anyway, oops, I already did. Sorry. But you have your original art, and then you have the limited edition wrapped canvases, and then textures, greeting cards, which are so cool to see that. And then you have deluxe prints, and then you have art that's available through the Disney Gallery. So. And it's available on your website, but I saw you at the Epcot this past January, in the Epcot Festival of the Arts. What is that experience like? And you meeting so many Disney fans who love to collect your art, and you get to experience, the festival. What is that like? How is it like meeting, the fans?
Well, that's one of my favorite parts. I mean, I think being somebody that used to be on stage, it's like you're not going to lie and say, oh, it's so hard to be around people. I always say there's worse things than standing around all day while people say nice things to you, and take your picture and ask for your autograph. It's quite nice. I always say, I wish everybody had that opportunity where just a day where everybody came up and said nice things to them. So I didn't realize how much I missed it, because it had been a full year. And I mean, it even like, I was getting choked up, and I mean, people are coming, and then, people just, like this lady bought one of my custom paper tickets, I think, and just said, this is the first time I've been in the park since my husband died. And I'm getting this ticket book that's going to say 1979, because that's the year we met. And, just like who am I that I get to make that piece for her, or just people come up and just tell me stories about something they own or something they, somebody gave them. I mean, I said, to say it's a blessing is just like a complete understatement. And I work like 10 hours a day. You don't notice. I mean, it just, I said, there's worse days than,
Oh,
and people go
well,
like, oh, gosh, I can't believe you have to stand here all day. I'm like, I'm good. You know?
oh, because I'm like, wait, that was the longest time you'd been, the longest number of days or the
Yeah, I did
number of running
17
days that you've done.
this year. Last year I did 10. And then I'm actually planning, if it works out, to do the entire thing next year because it was just so successful.
Oh,
I'm
good.
just like, I got to do whatever I got to do
Sure.
to do this whole thing because
wow.
I didn't know if people were going to come. I didn't know if people were going to spend money.
You had a great spot too.
Yeah, I mean, I did better. I mean, compared to the previous year, it was a stronger year. So now I had a really great location. I was inside. Being inside made it easier overall because when I'm outside, there's a lot more physical stuff where you're just literally opening your tent every day and closing it up at night and shoving stuff around if the weather's bad and just being inside and not having to touch anything all day.
Oh yeah.
I was less tired even though I was there longer, but it was great. There's just nothing like it. And I think every artist there will tell you the same thing. Like, it's such a nice, because the stuff we do, like I work for myself. I'm home alone. It's like I'm just making stuff in my house, So it is nice to share it and, to have people, to get that input, to get that feedback. And, and so what's nice for me is because my stuff isn't carried in the parks, people have never seen it. It's like you get a lot of collectors there that how I've never seen this, and so it's nice because then it's sort of like there's an impetus to like, well, you better get it because it's going away.
Yeah.
but it is nice because I'm bringing something that this passionate group of collectors, a lot of them have never seen, because even if they go to the festival every year, they may not catch it the week that I'm there. So it's I said it's a great payoff for the for the amount of work that goes into it and stuff. But
that's
it is just, I said, I always enjoy meeting the fans and talking, and it's, and not just about my art. I mean, it's like we just we'll have great conversation about the park, or I have this stuff, a lot of the stuff using the old ticket books, and that spurs a lot of conversations about that, and just the park history and all stuff. So, or because I'm from California, I always get in the discussions of what do you like better, Disneyland or Disney World, and so you have some spirited conversations around that. But
yes, I'm sure.
I totally love it. I can't wait to get back. I don't know when I'm going to be back, but I'm excited that at least something's opening up.
Something's open, yeah.
Not another year, but we'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because seeing all the artists come down there, I haven't had a chance to go to Festival of the Arts yet, although I think I would probably spend far too much money if I did go. But for me, it's the logistics of it all. I think that's kind of interesting. And this is a little bit in the weeds. So you're, whatever you can or can't discuss, I totally get. But so in that kind of a setting, because this is a newer festival, does Disney kind of invite you in? Do they then help foot the bill for some of the housing, or do you actually pay for a spot to put your art in Festival of the Arts, or kind of how does that logistic piece of it work?
No, they're very gracious. I mean, they invite me, I get myself there, but then they kind of take care of everything else.
That's great. Good.
Like, I'm not.
Do you have your own plaid to take you around?
No, I do not.
Oh, well, you must put that in your contract. The stipulation this year. No.
Yeah.
So
no,
I'm
but
just happy to be there. Yeah, but
I mean, some of the art is there. Like, so when they're setting up like a Wonderground booth or Disney, so for everybody else that they're inviting in, it's kind of the same gig. It's like, here's your space. What do you need? What kind of racks do you need? What kind of shelves do you need? And they provide it. And no, they're very, very gracious. So that's
great.
It's easy to do. It's as easy to do as it could be. So, and then my like anything I have that's made for me, like canvases and stuff, that's a fairly local distributor there. So I am able to reorder things as other than my handmade stuff, which will eventually be gone. A lot of the product I'm able to reorder and get within any number of days, depending on how busy they are. So that makes it kind of nice too, because I sold out of some things like immediately. And then it was nice to be able to say, oh, well, I'm going to have these back in 4 days or something. So,
That's very cool.
I'm actually able to restock over the course of the event, which is nice. But no, as I said, it's a great event, and they treat us all so well that it just makes you want to come back.
That's really good to know and really good to hear. Vanessa, you have our next question.
Yeah, well, we were wondering, how do you draw inspiration for your art? Is it about trying to find the characters or create pieces that people will like, or do you have other inspiration, or do you even find inspiration from other artists?
I'd say it's probably a little of all of those. I mean, being a consignment artist, I tend to make things that I think the greatest number of people will like and purchase.
Sure.
So I don't tend to go for the more obscure or smaller films. I get a lot of requests for, say like Fox and the Hound and, Robin Hood, which are great films, but I don't feel like they have the fan base of a Maleficent. So, sometimes I make things I like, and in the hopes that other people will like it. I would say Up was like that. Like I thought I had the chance to make an Up piece, and because I love Up, well, I totally underestimated, like everybody loves Up, and it's been one of my best selling pieces. But most of the time at this point in my career, if I'm making a new piece, my major thought is, what's a creative way, for it to work with my medium. It has to be interesting, but also, what do I think is going to have a broad appeal is probably a good way to do it. So some of the ones, I have in my head to do is like, I've always wanted to do like a Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. I think that would be a huge piece. Or I have an Alice in Wonderland one, that's We're All Mad Here, something like that. So there's things like that. I know they don't appeal to everybody, but I do tend to focus on things. I always say Sleeping Beauty is a great example. I did over the years, there's, anniversaries of Sleeping Beauty. For 2 of them, I did Maleficent pieces that were just, flew off the shelves. The last Sleeping Beauty piece I did for D23 Expo was the only one I actually ever did Sleeping Beauty. I'm still trying to get ready.
She's still sleeping.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's a little sleepy piece. No, I love it. It's a piece actually designed for the Fantasyland suite at the Disneyland Hotel. Like it was a concept I sent them that they never picked, and I loved it, so I just kept it. But it was like an example of go with what you know, which is do another Maleficent, because I know she will always sell. The villains will sell. It's so there is a bit of that involved. It might seem a little cynical, but I mean, I want stuff to move. Like I don't want to make something that I'm just going to haul around back and forth for 10 years trying to move through the edition. I want the editions to sell through. And because I only get to sell them at various times a year, they need to be things that I don't have to take home with me at the end of the event.
Sure.
So classic characters, classic films. I think Up's probably the most current film I've ever done. That is a contemporary film. Like I have a neat one I've thought of for Rapunzel that I would love to do because I love that movie. And we'll see. I did a Frozen one that did well, like right when it came out, and then just nothing. I don't bring it with me anymore. Because it's like I kind of was came out right on the tail end of the frenzy of the first movie. I mean, I love the piece, but it seemed like it's past its expiration date. So,
Brett, you had our next
a little bit of all of that in there.
Well, I mean, if we're talking about Disney fan culture, what do you think it is about Disney that creates such a huge fan culture?
It is interesting. And I've talked about this with, my admiration for Walt Disney, because I said, like, who else in the 20th century left that kind of legacy? Nobody. I mean, he was a businessman. It was a company, but so was Ford and so was Coke, who have fan bases but not like this. I mean, not that get down to the social level. You know, I was remember being at D23 years ago, and a elderly lady was talking to me, and I somehow it came up like, well, who are you here with? And she's like, oh, I'm here with a group of like a dozen people or something that I met on a cruise. And, you know, now we're just all great friends, and I've been to their kids' weddings. And I'm like, what company like ever generated that level of social interaction among human beings? You know, so I don't know, but I said, I think it's a combination of a lot of it. It's everybody's childhood, you know, and whatever era you were a child in, you know, you gravitate to that, and there's a fan base for that, and just the commonality, you know. And I was saying, you know, even in this time where there's a lot of conflict in the country, I always say one of the things I love about being in the parks is you don't see it. You know, like you see everybody of every stripe and color talking to each other in line, like complete strangers. It'll be like, oh my gosh, have you seen this? You know, that I said it's a little simplistic, but I said it gives me hope, because I think that's how we are. You know, I love seeing that. Now there is a commonality there with Disney that I think gives people that freedom. But I still think it's great, you know, like I see everybody really just kind of coming together over that stuff. But I think it is a unique thing. I said, I don't really think there is anything else that gives people that shared, you know, commonality coming out of a company, you know, like they really kind of came out of somebody's business plan, you know, that just has gotten to the point where there's social networks, you know, and friendships and marriages and kids that have resulted because, you know, Walt Disney made animated movies.
Well, and even content that we do, you know, we've had so many other podcasters on that spend hours of their life, and us included, talking about our love for this company. It's so incredible, the amount.
Well, and the income people make who aren't part of the company.
Right.
You know, I said, like, and I'm one of those. Like, I've never been an employee of the company, and yet most of my income comes as a result of it existing. And there's travel agencies and hotels and podcasters and YouTube channels and all this stuff that, I mean, it's just it'd be interesting if anybody could ever somehow total that up. I mean, just the amount of
the economic impact of that.
Yeah, exactly. That exists because Walt Disney made animated cartoons, you know. It's pretty staggering. I mean, I wonder if anybody's done like a research paper or something just on like the impact.
Ooh, that'd be fun.
Overall impact it had on the US and world economy, you know. So I said, I that's the part of it that I love. It's just that there's such a diverse group of fans, and yet it's fun to watch them all just like love it at the same time in their own way.
Absolutely. Vanessa, you have a question.
Well, you mentioned on your Facebook page recently an exhibit you were involved in 2014, I think, called The Mechanical Kingdoms, where you presented Steampunk Willie, which we love. Do you have a favorite or maybe multiple favorite exhibits you've been asked to be a part of?
I think that one was pretty cool. Well, some of the ones, like some of these ones they used to do in the parks were pretty over the top. You know, I said like the Mr. Toad one I went on, I said like, this was all new to me. And here I am, I'm in Fantasyland with a glass of wine and you could ride like Peter Pan, you know, with a glass of wine. I'm like, okay, this is kind of surreal. Like, I don't.
That's cool.
Or, you know, that there were like cheese plates in the queue for Snow White.
Oh, wow.
So just kind of those sort of over the top experiences have been, you know, there was one called the Disney Divas, and it was Maleficent, Evil Queen, Ursula, Cruella, and the Queen of Hearts. So I did some of my favorite pieces were the pieces from that. But they did a show that night. I think you can find it online. It was like one of the best live shows I've ever seen in a Disney park, and they did it for one night. And it was all those characters singing. Like Cruella comes out, you know, singing "How Much Is That Doggy" in the window, and you know. But I mean, it was, and then it was hosted. The best part was it was hosted by Ursula's unauthorized sister. who
Oh,
was pretty off the rails. I mean, to the point they had complaints. You know,
oh wow.
Oops.
a little
Oops.
too bawdy, but but I mean, some of those things that I got to attend, for free, were, I said, just so amazing, and to be a part of, and again, kind of get to be there as sort of a guest, as somebody that was, part of the team apparently.
Yeah.
Was really, really nice. But I mean, it's hard to say. There's been so many, but it's just an honor. I mean, like, I think to be at Disneyland's 50th, like to be an artist that got to do something for Disneyland's 50th anniversary was pretty humbling. That I'm somebody they picked for that, I think was, again, nothing in my wildest dreams as a child would I have ever thought, oh, I bet someday I'm going to be doing not just art for Disney, but I'm going to be part of their 50th anniversary. So I think that one probably stands out as something I remember being just pretty honored and pretty humbled by.
Absolutely. It's just so great to hear all these experiences. And this is my last non-rapid fire question that we have for you. And you've kind of talked about this a little bit, that you haven't dove into these yet, but I think that there's some potential here. So as a Disney fine artist, you're able to create with all these characters. And Bob Iger, his big thing with the company was acquisitions and expanding. So he made a lot of acquisitions during his time. Of those, between Pixar, Star Wars, Marvel, is there anything that excites you in there as an artist for maybe potential for making that the art with those characters?
Yes and no. Now there's a lot of limitations on those properties. Because I'm a parks artist, I don't have access to Star Wars, or I don't believe Marvel. So because I've asked, so because there's a lot of licenses involved in those properties that pre-exists their purchase. And so now I'd say, like, again, the one for Pixar that was the best for me was Up, just because I love that movie. But I said I would love to do Star Wars stuff. I mean, I would love to do, probably not the characters, but I mean, even a Galaxy's Edge piece that was really layered, like you're looking through the arch and you kind of see, these layers go back. I mean, I would love to do that. So, and that maybe because it's in the park may be a possibility. I think with Marvel, I would love to do things that look like, I mean, they could literally give me comic book covers, that I could then take that artwork and just totally create really cool 3D I mean, I think the superheroes would really lend themselves well to kind of the mixed media paper sculpture thing. So I would love to work with those. It's just kind of there's more limitations on it than I knew going in. Like, I just think, oh, well, like I do think I can do Muppets, and I really, really want to do a Muppet piece. So
that would be great, especially now. I mean, Muppets are having such a resurgence on Disney Plus.
Yeah. So I'm working my way through.
Yeah, you can maybe the Avengers Campus is your way to get,
possibly.
To there, Well, we'll put it out there.
I pitched an idea for Avatar, or for Pandora. I pitched an idea that going where, but because again, that one to me was a great. Just the view of that land would have been a great 3D piece.
Absolutely. I was just envisioning that you could do a shadow box and maybe specialize it for my son. I would say my son, but then his name would be Craig. So we, I could say it's for my son, but with Captain America and all of that too. But no, this is just been wonderful to get to talk to you about a lot of these different exhibits and everything else. Now we do some fun things at the end of an interview. We do some rapid fire questions, and actually our conversation, I added one rapid fire question to the list from our conversation. And so what this is just as quickly as you can, whatever you'd like to say in response to these questions. So I'll start us off with the one I added, which is, what's your favorite Broadway musical?
Oh, The Wiz. I saw The Wiz as a kid that blew me away, and it's very different from the movie. I didn't like the movie. because I was one of the only people that saw the stage show. But I say that left an impact on me like no other show.
That's awesome. How about your favorite Disney animated film? And this could be either classic or Disney Renaissance and later, or you can answer both. But favorite Disney animated film?
Up.
Okay.
You know, as far as as far as like the classic films, I'm like looking at my office. I think and Mary Poppins probably is up there, even though it's not technically animated film, but yeah, I'd say that one.
Animated parts.
Yeah.
Absolutely. What about your favorite attraction at the parks?
Tower of Terror.
Oh, you just gave Vanessa some trauma here.
You don't like that
There's
one?
a little motion sickness issue and a little
Let me specify.
Guardians of the
Flashbacks.
Galaxy. You know,
The Magic Kingdom Tower of Terror is just, to me, just hands down one of the crowning achievements. Now, I did just get to ride. I think Avatar I love, and I just rode Rise of the Resistance for the first time, and that's pretty mind blowing. Yeah. But I think I love the era of Tower of Terror, and I love the Twilight Zone. And it's like that one at Magic Kingdom, its placement at the end of a street and up a hill, and you walk through these dead gardens with tinny music playing. I mean, that whole package is just, to me, one of the best ever.
You know, if it ever makes its way to Disney Plus, there is an amazing Wonderful World of Disney movie on the Tower of Terror. I think you would really love it.
Oh, cool.
It's very, very cool. It's just called Tower of Terror. It is available. You can find it, but it'd be much easier if they put it on Disney Plus.
Is that the one with Steve Gutenberg?
Yes, it is.
I've seen of it. I haven't seen it.
Yeah, it's well worth the watch. Definitely
cool.
Check it out for sure. What about your favorite Disney snack?
My
this
favorite
is a tough
thing
one, right?
Recently is it's actually in Pandora. And they have it at Disneyland now. It's the pineapple lumpia.
Oh.
It's like a pineapple and cream cheese spring roll.
Ooh, that does sound good.
It's pretty good.
Okay.
I'll have to check that out next time I'm there. How about now we're eating more. What about your favorite restaurant, whether that be in the resort or in the parks?
Oh, that's a tough one. Well, I will say, no, actually it's not, but sadly it closed. I loved the Tangerine Grill at Epcot. I would eat there if when I'm there for like time and time, for days and days. I sometimes eat there 3 times in a week. I loved their food. So I was sad to see them close. I'm hoping maybe they reopen. Thematically, I always loved the Primetime Cafe. I actually wrote and have published. I have 4 dinner theater shows that are published, and 3 of them are called Uncle Phil's Diner, and it's a whole interactive dinner theater. And that was one of the main inspirations, was that your waiter knows you. So
that is so great. We have Vanessa who works for a local theater here, and we all love to perform. So we might have to check in to how we get our hands on those.
It was just kind of that. If you ever heard of Ed Bevick's in LA, it was kind of like jumped on the table, but it was like a 50s diner, and all the wait staff were like the high school kids that knew you. And there's just a funny plot line stuff where they just drag people up from the audience and play stupid games. And
that's awesome.
They're super fun.
That is great. That is great. Do you have a favorite land at the various Disney parks?
Good question. I'm trying to think. Disneyland. I'd say probably Adventureland is my favorite at Disneyland. And I think Pandora to me is just like one of the most beautiful things they've ever built. Yeah. But I'm also really blown away with Galaxy's Edge. I hadn't been in it in a year, and when I went back, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I forgot like how over the top the detail is on this. So, but as far as like I think Adventureland just to me the one at Disneyland just sells it. You just feel like you just walked into another world.
You definitely won Vanessa back over with your answer there.
That's all fine.
Yeah. Okay.
She could just ride the Jungle Cruise all day long.
Yeah.
Have you, or do you want to travel to any of the international parks? And if so, which one?
I've been to Paris, and that one was just stunning. I mean, the Castle Park. The Hollywood Studios needs a California Adventure overhaul. There was neat stuff in it, but I wasn't. I was there for like a couple hours. I went back to the other park. The Magic Kingdom there is just stunning. It's so over the top. I loved it. But I'm dying to go to all the Asia parks for various reasons for each one, you know, but I would go to every one of those. Mostly like Disney Sea. That just looks amazing.
Oh, it does.
I'd go to Hong Kong just to ride Mystic Manor, you know, and then Shanghai just to ride Pirates and stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm going to pass it over to Brett. He's got our last question.
All right.
Well, we have one more question, Dave. How do you describe Disney magic?
That's a good one. I'd say it's something you don't get anywhere else. You know, as a parent, like I had a daughter and we went to Disneyland a lot. And, you know, I'm a local, I'm somebody that kind of works for the company, but nobody there knows it. So I got the same magic everybody else got. And I just have some of the best memories of stuff happening there with characters coming up just out of the blue to my daughter and doing stuff. And, you know, I said, like, you don't get that anywhere else. And, you know, just being able to go, just the whole experience, I think being somewhere where, I don't know, life kind of suspends for a period of time and you are able to play, you know, and I mean, you don't have to, you can fight it and you can be miserable there. I've seen that. I've been that. Let's be honest. I've been that. But that like, you can enjoy these bizarro things that just like wouldn't happen anywhere else. One of my best memories was Christmas one year. We went to Disneyland. And they used to have Santa out in this cabin in kind of where the old barbecue was before they tore it down. And we'd never been to that Santa. So we said, let's go see that. So we wait in line and we get up there. And my daughter goes up, she's like 7 or 8 and has her time with Santa. And then my wife and I go over to take a picture together. And Santa looks at me and says, I love your new train artwork in the gallery.
Oh, wow.
And it was like, I just burst out laughing. I was like, that was the best Christmas ever. You know, I mean, just what a bizarro, unexpected thing that, again, just made my Christmas, you know. Now, years later, I kind of, you know, I knew who the guy was and everything, but it just, like, that caught me so off guard that I was like, Santa knows my work. You know?
Well, and
He's
if
a
anybody's
fan.
gonna know trains, it's gonna be
Exactly.
Santa. I mean,
Yeah.
come on, that is
Seen
high
plenty
praise.
of them. Yeah. So.
But I said just that, and again, not even. But I mean, that just other moments I had just with my daughter, where just the cast members going out of their way to do something for her. Mary Poppins skipping by and just grabbing her hand, and you know, I think where does that happen? Where else do you go in this world where you know you have that kind of experience, or just the time you get with your family doing something in a place like that, you know, where you're all kind of together and sharing that experience, which is kind of what Walt wanted, somewhere where, you know, grandma and the kid could go on the same attraction and experience it and enjoy it and stuff. So I think that's what it is. It's just such a unique place, and it doesn't matter which park you go to or in which country. It's like you get it everywhere, and I credit them with being able to maintain that, because it's tough.
I have such a horrible memory, but I remember almost every second of every Disney vacation, right? And so that's what it's because you're building those memories as you go. So we just want to say thank you so much, Dave, for joining us. And we want to definitely draw people to where they can follow you and where they can find your artwork. I know that most of it or much of it is available in the parks exclusively, but also you do still have your other artwork that you do sell on your website as well. Can you point people where to follow you?
My website is just kind of my name. It's just Dave Avanzino and then the word designs.com. And then just on Instagram, I'm just at Dave Avanzino. And on Facebook, it's the Dave Avanzino Designs.
Great. That's so wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your time. And thank you so much for your beautiful art.
Well, I said I thoroughly enjoy it. So I mean, I feel very lucky and blessed that I get to not just do something I like, but something that I really like and love and enjoy doing and enjoy sharing. So I always joke and I say, sometimes it becomes a job like anything else, and you get tired and you get cranky and complaining about it, and then I slap myself and say, shut up and do your fun job. Like nobody cares.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
My
Thank
pleasure.
you.
That was a fascinating interview. Just really enjoyed our time with Dave. What I loved about it was that he was willing to tell us so many stories and so many things about himself personally as well. I loved talking theater with him and the set design with him. It's just a really fun, like you can tell when someone is just a true fan and just really enjoying their work as well. And certainly it comes through in that interview and in our discussion with Dave. I can't wait to check out his pieces more. But Brett, thank you again for making this contact for us and for going to Festival of the Arts. I know that it was a labor having to go down to Disney World to meet all these cool artists, right? That was such a hard work for the podcast.
Thank
Well,
you.
I do what I can. And this time around, Epcot Festival of the Arts and had some challenges as far as lots of people during a pandemic. But for the podcast, are you kidding me? For the podcast, I did that. So yeah, was happy to. And the thing is, I mean, I've talked about his, iconic shadowbox that has Disneyland. And I'm like going, I've talked to him twice about it now. And I did not purchase that because it was not available there, but oh yes, it will be mine.
Well, Brett, I also want to know what your feelings are for the interview, because you have followed this man's career for over a decade, right? I mean, you've really enjoyed
I
his
think so.
work.
Well, as long as, yeah, it has been. Oh my gosh, because we were there with Facebook. I joined a little late. And so I try not to be the first person to like, because I think that's, I'm like going,
That's
I want to be the
worse,
first
Brett,
person
that
who
you're
likes
just
all of the
waiting
stuff,
for someone else to like.
I know, I'm like going, but it's just, it's so nice to talk to him at length this time around and to learn so much more about his work and his art and all of his interests. I mean, they're very similar to ours. Disney, theater, who are we kidding? I mean, I think we have a new friend.
Absolutely. Vanessa, your thoughts on the interview. Now you have a story to go along with your art.
I know, it feels like we have a new pal, and we've got a friend, and it's cool. I mean, he was so enthusiastic when he was telling his stories and talking about art, and I really enjoyed listening to him. And I think he has the best laugh of anyone we've had on the podcast. I told him that after we were done recording, and I think he was surprised and maybe scared. But I just think if you notice something about someone, you should point it out and hope for the best. Maybe not the best practice of mine, but anyway, he was delightful. I enjoyed all of his stories, and I'm glad I didn't do this now, but I kind of wanted to ask him to like sing us a song or go talk more about theater. Like I was all about talking more about his theater experiences because, well, what a talented person he is. I mean, he can do art, he can sing, he can do set design. He's just a fascinating person that I could spend another hour talking to him about all those wonderful things. So I was really happy to meet the man behind the art.
Brett is telling him he's not a stalker on Facebook, which is sign number one that you are a stalker, by the way. And then,
stop, please no.
Vanessa is saying that his laugh is great. And then I'm saying we're going to go and produce his shows that he's written. So, so in case Dave Avanzino is completely terrified of the three of us and listening back to this, I just want you to know, Dave, we just really enjoy your work. And that comes through quite a bit. So it was just such a great interview and wonderful time to be able to talk to somebody creative and just amazing. The types of interviews we're able to get has just been incredible to be able to talk to those creative people inside the company. And like he said, outside the company, having never taken a paycheck from the company directly, but still inspiring that type of art that fans love and the whole community loves. So if you want to hear more of those types of interviews, and then also just the three of us palling around and talking all things Disney, be sure to follow us on any podcast app of your choice. So especially if you're a fan of Dave's and listening to us for the first time, please make sure to subscribe to the podcast on any platform that you like. You also can follow us on social media. Find us on Beyond the Mouse Podcast on Facebook, also Beyond the Mouse Pod on Instagram, and Beyond Mouse on Twitter. So check us out there. We are part of NPR Illinois Community Voices, so you can find us on nprillinois.org. You also can find us as part of the Front Row Network. You can follow them on all their social media. Just search for the Front Row Network on any platform that you have. And also, just if you could, please consider leaving us a review on iTunes or on any other podcast platform that you're listening to, because those reviews really do mean quite a bit to us. So we really appreciate those. And it's just great to be able to hear from you. And so message our Facebook account, shoot us an email at beyondthemousepod@gmail.com. Whatever way you want to get involved with the show, we would love to have you get involved with the show. Any final thoughts from you, Vanessa?
Dave, we're from the Midwest, so we're harmless. We're just really nice.
Oh,
We won't come stalk you or anything.
Gosh,
We're
now
just
he's really
fans.
scared. I'm sorry. Sorry,
that is
Dave.
the second time in 2 days I've said "ope" on a podcast because we mentioned that we're from the Midwest with a guest. So it's just great. Brett, what are your final thoughts?
I can't wait to go to Disneyland and make my Disneyland shadowbox purchase at last, because it's time.
Yeah,
Maybe
absolutely.
he'll even be there and can sign it. Yay.
Yeah.
To Brett from my good friend Dave. Now that sounds stalkerly. Sorry. I don't know. That's scary. How many times have we said stalkerly? We are not stalk. I'm not
least
gonna
you
say
didn't
it.
ask
We
for,
better
like, a
just get it
social
out of this
security
before we get ourselves in trouble.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
for Beyond the Mouse, I am Craig,
I'm Vanessa.
And I'm Brett.
and we will see you real soon, but not too soon, Dave. We promise. In the front row.
I'm totally
Bye.
scared now. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. We're not like that at all.
It was just so much fun. Such a great guy.